Okay, great. So my name is Brian Schrank. I'm co-chair of the game design program at DePaul. I have a PhD in digital media. Doing research in AR and VR was how I paid the bills when I was getting my PhD. Okay, so how does this thing work? Down? Is it frozen? There we go, okay. So what I'm going to talk about today is extending a book I wrote that MIT Press published called Avant-Garde Video Games Playing with Technoculture. Just kind of looking at the fringe of what is being done today and seeing what might become picked up by more large bodies, the mainstream in the future. To understand where I'm going to go with this talk, I think it's important to understand the concept in media studies about the democratization of communication. If you look at the history of any medium, whether it's photography, video, or even drawing, there's a concentration of power at the advent of the technology, and then over time there's a distribution of power. So on the left here we have the mechanical printing press, which revolutionized the ability to communicate ideas to the public. It was pretty much the cause of the rise of Protestantism and the decline of the Catholic Church. Also pornography was a hit on the press. Then of course with the digital reproduction revolution we have a further flattening of power and democratization of writing. We have a similar trend, but it happens differently in each medium. So with photography, we have a concentration of power because it was just so expensive and you had to have some engineering knowledge to deploy it at the first few iterative attempts at the medium. And Kodak published in 1900 the Brownie camera, which was basically the first commercially available product that many people could afford. And so they would start playing with that and they learned how to basically make terrible, crappy photographs, and that's, over time we learned how to do selfies today. And a part of the democratization of communication isn't just the availability of the medium, it's a literacy of how the medium functions. So everyone knows how to use an Instagram filter and what that means. The understanding of composition, of posing, is just much more ingrained today than it was 100 years ago. So the talk I'm giving today is really a long-form talk. A lot of us today are thinking of the next year, the next 5 or 10 years. This could be 30 years, I don't know, we'll see. And the idea of the literacy is, so we have a cynical approach to the constructed nature of images today. We didn't even have 30 years ago. So when you're on Facebook or you see something on television, you're like, is that even real? Is that constructed? So that level of sophisticated reading and analysis is a lot more common today, and we take it for granted, but it's actually a pretty deep literacy we have of images. So historically, avant-garde artists have provided glimpses into our popular future. You don't have to wait to see what will happen just by letting time go by. You can see what the weirdos, the artists, the academics, the tinkerers are doing with games or with art in any media and see maybe this is going to be picked up down the road. On the left here we have an image from the Pope's, the first time the Pope visited the United States. A video artist, Namjoon Paik from Korea, basically just videoed the motorcade, and then later that day he showed it at Cafe A Go-Go in Greenwich Village, New York. That was 1965. He's just taken kind of casual layman's approach, hey, this is a cool thing, I'll film it and I'll show it. And that was not done at the time because we didn't have disposable, really accessible video equipment. But he was prescient in understanding this is a disposable technology. We're just going to video shit and then show it later to our friends. And of course that concept is common knowledge today. People are taking videos here, taking videos, as you visit Malaysia if you're from out of town. It's just common to do. Vito Akanchi on the left here, I think this is 1973, his video theme song. It's basically a YouTube confessional. He's saying, I hope you like me, I hope I'm popular, I hope I'm pretty. And this is actually commonly done today. This is something that he's kind of prefiguring, a few generations ago. Dara Birnbaum created this remix of Wonder Woman, where it's just basically the show, which was 1970s show about Wonder Woman, about how she transforms by spinning around. Dara Birnbaum just basically remixed that into a comedic effect in the 70s. And of course, when we see videos today, a lot of us even imagine how we might remix them, or anything we see is material fodder for remixing. We have a very cynical, literate approach to video. Any of us do. We can remix it on our iPhones. So today, avant-garde artists are prefiguring the future of games. We don't know what'll stick. It's not everything they're doing, but some things they're doing will surely spread. It's just how the market works. How many people have seen this, the participation pyramid of games? It's Ralph Koster's, participation pyramid. So according to my knowledge, this might not be accurate, but this was really picked up at the Game Developers Conference when the current consoles were in development, years ago. Because they realized, how are we going to create content that's going to actually fulfill all of these hours and hours of play on these new consoles? We're going to have to get players to start creating more and more of this content. Obviously, with mobile, this might be less of a thing, but this is a concept that's sort of increasingly discussed in certain circles in game development. The idea is, how can we get more players from the bottom to the top? So they're not just playing games, but they're creating content that other players are going to enjoy. Of course, with Ingress, you had a lot of players creating locations that Pokemon Go is utilizing today. I mean, this is common tactics in development, and in Little Big Planet, there's 8 million levels that players have created. So this is a strategy that's commonly used by major developers. Okay, so the Avant-Garde takes a very different approach to this. Playpen is a game that is basically structured like a wiki. Any player can edit any page, any pixel, and cause a link to, like if you click here, it can go to the options screen. If you click here on the next page, it can go to this guy burning. It could be ad hoc, it could be nonsensical, it could be anarchistic, but it's an interesting adventure game. It's basically a Wikipedia crowdsourced adventure game. And there are threads of stories that are happening in there, but it's not edited, it's not censored. It's sort of like 4chan as a game developer, as a collective game developer. Sleep is Death is a game by Jason Rohrer, another avant-garde game developer. It's a two-player asymmetrical game where one person is playing the game and the other person is usually about a screen or two ahead developing the game live as the other person's playing. So it's a little bit like a dungeon master in Dungeons of Dragons. It's a performative improvisational game as you're reacting what the first player is doing, what they're thinking. You have a lot of artists that are making sophisticated critical games about either politics or about the form of the medium itself. September 12th by Gonzalo Frasca is a game about the American policy in reaction to 9/11, the war on terror. And it's a game you can't win by shooting. It's a critique of drone warfare. If you shoot, you're going to create more terrorists. You think you can kill the terrorists that are in the kafiyas, but if you try to kill one, you'll eventually just create more terrorists. So it's a game you win by not playing. On the right, we have Untitled Game by Jody, which they basically deleted 80% of the Quake 3D game engine and revealed it kind of an underlying strange logic in the moire patterns and in the behaviors of the enemies. Both of these games are more installed in galleries than, obviously, they're not making money, but they're culturally significant. So I'd like just to draw a connection to the literacy and the understanding and the potential of games as a medium here as to what Dara Birnbaum was doing in the 70s, predicting remix culture today. So I think if you think about what's going to happen down the pike with games, is you're just going to have a lot more shitty, like anarchistic games. You're also going to have a lot more sophisticated games that people are going to be wanting to play. You're also going to have millions and millions of personal games. Dysphoria is a game about a woman's gender reassignment, going from male to female. And it's a mini games kind of like WarioWare, where in this one you're trying to make it to the toilet in a woman's bathroom, but you look half male, half female. And there's thousands, if not millions of these already, of these personal games that are kind of throwaway projects people do in a weekend, or in a week, or in a year. But there's just so many of them. It's kind of a thing that's happening underneath the commercial industry's nose. These are love projects, passion projects. And these games run the gamut of human experience. On the left, we have how do they do it? It's sort of our, when we first think about how are babies made. It's a really stupid game that you just shove these two dolls together and just wonder how babies appear. On the right, we have A Moment Free from Darkness, which is a game about human trafficking. In the VR component, you experience first-person rape. Basically, a man is buying to have sex with you. So these are very serious games. And then there's also games about nothing. This is A Slow Year by Ian Bogost. It's a game played on the Atari 2600 console, and there's 4 poems, 1 for each season, and for winter you just sip coffee. It's a game about nothing. Okay, so we have, I hope I'm setting kind of the table here, we have millions communicating through disposable games, similar to the Brownie camera invented released in 1900, setting up the stage for millions and billions and trillions of disposable images, photographs that we take now with our phones. Games are poised to sort of occupy that space as well. And this is accelerated by easy game creation and sharing. And remember that procedural literacy is something that's going to increase over time. So it might seem strange and difficult to imagine how can people make games if they can't even understand how to program today. But this is something that seems to be deeply desired by an increasing number of people, so it will happen. And then of course easy sharing such as itch.io or of a number of platforms you're well aware of. So I've been talking about the democratization so far and the flattening of power, but let's talk about the ubiquity for a minute. Am I done, or do I have a few minutes here, or what's the time? Done? All right, that's perfect. Thank you, okay. So let's talk about ubiquity, games everywhere. How many people have seen this? This is the image of the game Apocalypse by Jesse Schell, who was mentioned earlier. People have seen this? It's this kind of predictive, dystopian view of the future of games, where every thing you're doing is tracked and quantified. Every step is quantified. Every penny spent is quantified. Every line of a book you've read is quantified. And not only is it quantified, but it's integrated in corporate and government systems that are tracking you. And they're giving you rankings and feedback, I guess sort of like the Sesame system in China, where it's social ranking based on patriotism. So it's like that, and it's basically any new aspect or avenue of data culling can be integrated into this sort of dystopian view of games integrating themselves into everyday life. This isn't my slide, it's from Jesse Schell's DICE talk from 2010. And of course, we're all very familiar with how this plays out. It seems very superficial when we see it one game at a time, like drip by drip. So Pokemon Go, we're walking around to hatch eggs and capture Pokemon. And the results of this are pretty interesting. Already we have, a lot of these stories are fake, but some of them are real, where people are going into areas, going into people's backyards, going into parks at 3 a.m., getting arrested, things like that. So there's a tangible effect when you have people playing with augmented reality games. And this isn't an effect, but the actual purpose, the sort of disruptive energy that you see happening by accident in Pokemon Go is the purpose of some alternate reality games, games that are meant to change the world in however hyperbolic that might sound. Here's an image of an alternate reality game called Toy War. This is just a very short story. I think you can see the connection between the potential of augmented reality when you think about alternate reality. So Toy War is a game that an artist group named eToy created in response to a lawsuit by eToys.com on trademark infringement. So eToy didn't respond the way that most people would in the courts, even though that was it was a lawsuit. They said, we're going to make a game that will destroy your company, for real. 1 minute, okay, I'm almost done. So to play the game, you actually had to you had to plant media bombs. You would go into forums of stock traders and plant misinformation. You were basically trying to hurt the stock of the company by playing. And if you could track something you did with a downturn in the stock's value, you would gain credit in the game. So thousands of people were playing this to support the artist group to hurt etoys.com. And after, I think, 2 months of the game playing, the stock value had dropped by half. It was 4.5 billion, then it was 2.25 billion. And after a month or two, the company actually closed. This is also at the dot-com boom in bubble bursting, so you can sort of draw any conclusions with that. It was it the game or was it the dot-com? So I think I'm probably a little bit more. I got one more slide. So this is the last slide. So this is more of a positive approach. This is another alternate reality game called World Without Oil. And in this game, players just are supposed to imagine what happens when the cost of gasoline and oil double, triple, and increase in orders of magnitude. How does their everyday lives change? So you have soldiers that were stationed in Iraq at the time, blogging as if they're there in World War III to secure America's oil supply, kind of a dystopian fantasy game they're playing, and they're real soldiers, creating media under this fantastic premise. You have other people planting victory gardens, like the States did in World War II, to have local vegetables grown in your front yard. So it was a game meant to change your everyday life, and that was its purpose. So when it happens by accident with games with Pokemon Go, that's actually a core affordance of augmented reality games, is actually affecting reality in tangible, if not lasting ways. That's finished. Okay. I'm done. I'm done. Thank you.